Good evening and welcome to tonight's webcast. We're live from West Manchester Police Force HQ, and tonight I have with me Sir Fahy, the Chief Constable, and the Police and Crime Commissioner Tony Lloyd. We've had lots of questions so far, but you still have a chance to submit your questions via the hashtag AskGMP by Twitter and also via the GMP website. But without further ado, we are going to get on straight with the first question. So we have a question here from Paul Slater, and I think it's from the Chief Constable. He's asking, can you ban alcohol at music festivals after the recent violence acts?
Well, I think it's open to people who license music festivals, working with the organisers, as to whether it's going to be alcohol sold or not. So I think the provision is there. I think anybody going to a music festival has got to be realistic about what it's like, and often clearly drink and food is part of the experience, not like you go to music festivals. Clearly the violence at Parklife, or the two incidents, are very regrettable. They are being investigated. But I think, to be in fairness, Parklife and other festivals on the whole have got a good record. And the fact is that these two individual incidents shouldn't harm the story really, that overall. Clearly a lot of people enjoy the festival. It is difficult though, because in Parklife it's in a sort of residential area, and a lot of people are very concerned with trying to work with them. But as I say, I think something about certainly the sale of alcohol and sensible sale of alcohol is something we'll review again, discussing next season with the organisers.
So it's just worth adding, we've got one of the biggest international festivals coming, which is the World Cup. Alcohol will be sold widely through that. Just a simple message to our race in Manchester is that we want people to enjoy the party, and we wanted people to enjoy park life. It's part of what makes this kind of nation a great place for people to live. There's lots going on. But in the end, to be first Chief Constable, we'll be making sure that very small minority of people who want to spoil things for others, then we will tolerate. Because most people want the party to be a great party. Most people want the entertainment that we have in our communities to be great. And actually working with clubs, with people across the different public agencies, we want this to be known as an area where people come to enjoy themselves. And alcohol is part of that. It's about being responsible, and it's about making sure that we don't let the occasional trauma disrupt everybody else.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on to our second question, that comes from Stella Coppard, and she's asking if we can have assurance that police dog handlers and dogs will not face cuts in the future because they do terrific jobs. So,
well, they certainly do a really important job. There was a reduction in the number of dogs some years ago, just before I became Chief Constable, I think it was, and I know there was a lot of controversy about that, particularly in the force. That has settled down. I think the dog unit do a good job. But our difficulty is we are faced with some difficult decisions in the future. Although the economic situation is improving, and our budget is going to continue to decline over the coming years, and I've got to say really that every part of the force's activity would have to be looked at, and that's a solution.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next question from Michelle Reeves. She's asking, is it okay for an off-duty officer to use
I don't think it is. It all depends about the circumstances, and an officer is liable for his or her conduct off duty as well as on duty. That's part of being a police officer. So really, if somebody's concerned about that, they clearly make a complaint, and the matter will be investigated.
A question here from Lisa and Jack Bradford. They say, hello, as career evenings for career 10s begin, what advice or pathways and training could you advise a young man to take who is hoping to join the force? It appears there are no job openings within the police force at the moment, and finds this disheartening. Local cadet programs are not available for the local school. Any advice?
Well, I mean, there are actually still a number of jobs that we're recruiting to, and I think the important thing to say is that there are lots of other jobs in policing other than being a police officer, and more the police officers that we are recruiting are actually mature individuals who have often done other jobs in policing or other jobs out there in society. So I'd say to any young person, obviously get as much qualifications as you can, work as hard as you can school, get as much experience of life as you can, do voluntary work, think about the different routes into policing, which include being a special constable, being a community support officer, working in a number of other roles within policing. You have various administration jobs and things like that, which are a good way in, apprenticeship scheme. As I say, I say to any young person, don't narrow your options to everything says that the more you learn, the more you're going to earn. Policing is becoming more and more complex. We will be expecting higher and higher standards. So it's really about getting a good experience of life, getting good qualifications, and as I say, looking at that fact that there are a number of other jobs in policing other than being a police officer, which are often a good start.
Okay.
I think it's also probably worth me adding that somebody who's just about starting year 10 is looking for somebody else up before the slots. Now, at the moment, the recruitment has been very slow because of the financial cutbacks that was imposed on Christmas. But that will come a point when GMP will have to recruit because whatever numbers we end up any government is going to have to accept the fact that we can't go below that, so we will get back to a normal recruitment sometime, probably, actually, in the sort of time if this young man has got, gets trained, educated, does some of the things that Peter talked about in terms of possibly reforms of work, volunteering, and we'll get back to normal, and people who've got strong backgrounds. Strong CV, if you like.
Fantastic. I'm just picking up on the point there that you mentioned the cadet scheme. That's obviously been a success of that in GMP. What are the plans for that in the future?
Well, we've already got 300 youth cadets across Greater Manchester. It is a very successful scheme. We are in discussions about whether we can further expand that. So clearly that is one option. But again, I would say there are lots of other wonderful youth organisations out there, like the Scouts, like the Boys Brigade, the Boys and Girls Clubs we have in Greater Manchester. So again, I'd just say to any young person, look at those sorts of organisations, look at the opportunities there, just get as much experience of life as you can.
Brilliant. Thank you. This comes from an anonymous questioner, and they're asking, I'm very well aware that the Chief Constable is doing his utmost to recruit members of the ethnic community to his workforce, as he wants GMP to reflect those communities. Mr. Fahy, you do come across as being very genuine, not just with this, but with other community initiatives that you've been involved in. So, do you want to comment on that? What's supposed to be?
Well, we've just been very clear about the reason why we want to have more members from ethnic minorities in the police force. It's for a very strong operational need. It's not for a target. It's not for political brains. It is because of the nature of the society that we live in. It is the need to gather intelligence. It's the need to do things like undercover work. But it is also important for the legitimacy of policing that we do reflect the society that we come from and reflect the great diversity we have here in Manchester. So we put a lot of effort into that. A lot of that is about making sure we recruit locally. We try and recruit from the communities that we're going to police. And that's why in the whole of the newspaper adverts, websites, because it's about us going out there and say looking at our communities locally. Because it's all about, the bedrock of policing is our relationship with the public. It's for all the great technology and the great squads and all this stuff. The most important thing is the ability to go out there and talk to people, build a relationship, get information from the public, get their cooperation in the fight against crime. And therefore, as I say, having more local people recruited from the local area, things like the cadets, things like our apprenticeship scheme, all helps to strengthen our relationship with them.
I think so Peter will also take great credit for the fact that when we look at not so much recruitment into the police ranks of GMP, because that's been very small numbers. Recruitment into the PCSOs, into the specials, certainly the cadets have shown enormous diversity already. And obviously, after the previous question, people who do come from PCSO background as a special are bound to be viewed as being a good potential recruitment into GMP more generally until a later stage. So the fact that we've seen such a big change in diversity really does make a difference. This isn't, as Peter says, it's not political correctness. it isn't paying lip service to anything. It is actually about the fact that Greater Manchester Police belong to all the people, all communities of Greater Manchester, and they want to reflect that. And that's what his ambition is, and I very strongly share that.
Thank you very much. We've got a question here from Twitter, from Scuba Steve, and they're asking what are the force doing for juvenile offenders to stop them reoffending instead of convicting them at such a young age?
Well, I think one of the great success stories actually in this country over recent years has been a big drop in youth crime and a big drop in the number of young people going into custody. And the police and GMP have played a part in that, along with our colleagues from the other agencies. And so absolutely, certainly sending a young person to custody is the very, very last resort, and taking them to court is a last resort. And we try and work very, very closely with the other agencies to identify youngsters at an early age who may be at risk of being involved, and then trying to put other interventions in, community-based initiatives to try and turn that around. And that's been enormously successful, and that has meant there are fewer victims of crime out there, and actually fewer young people and their lives can be destroyed by going into custody. Because what we learned is when a young person goes into custody, it's just the university of crime, and they are more likely to be persistent criminal in the future. So we'll keep working on that. We make huge use of things like restorative justice, of cautions. We involve the community and community panels. We work very closely with the schools and our youth organisations. So it has been successful, and we want to continue to build on that. But also look, for instance, how some of the lessons from that could be applied to, for instance, women offenders. So that again, we end up with fewer women going into custody. Again, that often has a very damaging effect, particularly on their families and particularly on their children, if their children are then taken into care.
Very much. Moving on to a question from Ian Upton. He's asking why crime is treated and acted upon differently across Greater Manchester, especially racist crimes.
Well, we hope to some extent that's not the case, certainly in terms of things like hate crime. That said, there will be variations. We cover a big territory across Greater Manchester. Officers and staff will react to different priorities. Although something might be called a racist crime or race crime, in terms of its nature, it may be different in terms of the threat, whatever it might be. So there's always a bit of tension really about we clearly have force policies. There's certain bits of policing which need to be consistent and consistently applied, but there also needs to be some local variation, and clearly individual officers need some discretion about how they deal with individual cases. But as I say, without knowing the exact nature of these two crimes, it's common.
I think what's worth saying is that hate crime will always have sort of racial motivated around gender, lifestyle, homophobia and disability is something that we've got as a society to tackle. Yes, there's a huge role because there's also a very big role for our communities generally to take that stand. But it's also probably worth reflecting on the previous question that the Chief Constable just answered, because of course actually one of the things that does make a difference is how does the victim feel about it. So, victims do feel different. This thing was not maybe a minor crime to me, actually an enormous crime to somebody else, even though it's seemingly the same thing. What is going to be the impact between the victim and the offender makes a difference. If we want to keep that young people out of social sentences, then we do have to reflect on that. But that is partly about keeping public trust. And keeping public trust is making sure that we do try to put victims at least very strongly in the centre of what we involved, especially those types of behaviour where there's a high personalised impact of hate crime. It's high on that. So that's why there can be variation, although as we mentioned with the Chief Constable, we don't want to see arbitrary difference. We want to see difference because circumstances are different to
I've got another question here that's coming via Twitter. And this person says, I see a lot of pedestrians being killed by a cyclist riding on the footpath. What are we doing about this problem?
it's a difficult issue. You know, I myself, you know, pretty clear really that the adults should not ride on the footpath. It gets a bit more difficult with children. Because clearly, I think obviously sometimes we have a dilemma. Tell a child to drive, you know, to cycle on the road. Clearly, that can be very dangerous. So clearly, we've got more and more people cycling, and often the road network is not designed for that. But on the other hand, people cycling on the pavement is antisocial. And the people restricting it to other people, and then sadly there is a chance you can kill them. So, you know, it is about clearly taking some enforcement action, but at the same time trying to say to adults, you know, essentially what's wrong with the road. And it's something I personally get irritated about. So, you know, my dogs, because the dogs don't react well to the bike coming along. So, and often you just think, so if you get into your road, why can't you be the road? So, I think it's one of those things where we need to work with local communities and obviously people who do cycle. And obviously as well, part of it is trying to work with local authorities about how we can get, difficult issue I know, but how we can get more facilities for cyclists to try and organise the road network so there's more room for cyclists to be on the road.
Let me pay the government's compliments. One of the things they have done recently is to announce or road safety schemes, particularly around the back. That is important because I cycle a lot less than I used to, although I've just had my back repaired. One of the things I know is that when I'm riding car and probably much less cycling than I used to be, and a little more bikes than I used to do. What is good though is that there's one road in particular I was asking for cycle lanes because 30 years ago. Now got some good cycle lanes, but I would really love to get some properly segregated footpaths for pedestrians, cycle lanes and cyclists, and the main motivators, because actually segregation is the real answer that keeps people safe. And segregation can ensure cyclists, but the older in road space and the pedestrians and the
And I think we've got to say that clearly there have been one or two incidents of pedestrians being killed on the road. But I think we need to acknowledge, sadly, there's been also a very high death rate amongst cyclists as a number of cyclists have grown. Clearly, there are more sadly being killed. You know, particularly cyclists and heavy lorries don't mix well. So, you know, as well, we're trying to work on that issue as well. Because, you know, we need to acknowledge that sadly, cyclists and working criminals.
Moving back to a question from Twitter, this comes from DSUK1. They're asking, how can members of the public report criminal behaviour they've witnessed online, such as on YouTube, YouTube videos where crimes take place?
I mean, people can obviously always contact us on the 101 number for non-urgent calls. There is action fraud, another number we don't have that here, but it's on the website for instance of fraud on the internet. But again, this will be a difficult issue in terms of if it is a crime on the internet, exactly where did the crime happen? Was it in the jurisdiction of the UK, whatever? We certainly people can contact us and report that. We're seeing a big growth in this particular area. It may involve us, if nothing else, trying to talk to the provider of the particular website to try and get them to take it down, but they are based in other countries, based in America, and it may not be their top priority. So people can report it, but I'm not promising that will be easy for us to actually solve it or investigate it, because this obviously is a new area, a growth area, and often the existing legislation, the existing criminal justice system are not really designed for the internet age.
When you say this is a new emerging area for folks, what can people do if they're having problems? Can they contact a certain individual people?
Well, then they can phone 101 and we will direct it to the right unit. We have dedicated staff who investigate fraud on the internet. A lot of our local staff deal with issues around things like bullying on Facebook and things like that. I can only tell you it's a huge growth area. We've had to do a lot of work to try and get our staff skilled up in this work. Clearly, technology is constantly evolving, so I can't say anything else. It is a huge challenge for the force. What I would say is people can take sensible, common sense measures. I think we find it very frustrating that people hand over huge amounts of cash to complete strangers on the internet. Don't use PayPal, don't use some of the common sense measures there. Clearly, a huge issue at the moment. People often asking for PIN numbers and personal details, using it on the phone. So, we are asking really people to be very internet safety aware. Look at the advice that is there on the web. Make sure you install the right sort of security software, and just be sensible really that these are public forums, and therefore again giving them details. You do with strangers on the internet. It can involve real dangers, and I think sometimes people think that's hidden on the internet. Yeah. So it is about trying to encourage the public to take common sense measures.
Okay. This is a question that's addressed to both of you, but Commissioner take the lead on this. It's from Susan Fields, and she asks, Dear Mr. Lloyd, Mr. Fahy, do you think GMP is shooting itself in the foot by telling everyone that GMP is actually coping? Crime is falling, even though we have much less resources in funding.
There are significantly less resources. What is true, fortunately, crime actually all over the Western world. There are some indications that sometimes crime may be on the slightly upward trajectory, and we've got towards that space. I don't think I'm complacent. I have said to Central that continuing budgets of Greater Manchester Police in the end is a very dangerous tactic, because one of the things that I don't want to see us end up with is a police service that is only about responding to emergencies. I know that I don't ever invite Chief Constables then to leave the political bodies, to me to fight that battle with the politicians in Westminster and Whitehall. But we do have to have a look at the funding of our services in general, the service in particular. If we're going to make sure we've got the men and women, the equipment we need to do the job, and the ability to work as a problem solving police force, and not just as crisis responders. We're not at breaking point, but the message has got to quite strongly to central government that can't carry on pushing service programs.
Number one, as Tony said, I'm not a politician. It's not for me to play in politics, and also we live in the real world. I've got to try and do my best with the money available to protect the public and give the service to the public. It is getting difficult. On the other hand, this has been a dilemma for us. We do not want to give the message to the criminals that somehow their life is going to be easier, or do anything which will make the public more afraid. We've tried to work, and I think our staff have worked incredibly well in making changes, changing working practices to cope with less budget and less staff, but it is getting increasingly. To say whether crime is reducing or increasing, it's actually what we have said is that it's only part of our workload. And certainly in terms of other demand, the number of vulnerable people out there, issues like mental health, and if anything, that part of our workload has grown and become more complex. So really, the issue about crime doesn't help us. This is a very challenging situation. We're trying to hold on to those parts of policing which the public really value. If we are going to continue over the next few years, we will need some new policy changes to try and help us do it. It's going to get more.
Very much. Moving on to a question from Scott Lever, and he asks, can you define what reasonable force is? As a martial artist, if I ever need to defend myself or my family because of an attempted crime, i.e. robbery or burglary, could I end up seriously injuring somebody? Seriously injuring somebody.
Yeah, the law is very clear that you can use reasonable force in the circumstances to defend your property, defend yourself, or to arrest an offender. Ultimately, that's up to the jury to decide, but again, the law also makes it clear that that has to be judged in terms of the situation you're in. So, it's very clear you can't expect someone who's under great threat to actually act completely rationally, and that has to be considered as part of any court case. And over recent years, we've had 3 cases in Greater Manchester where people defending their property themselves have ended up killing a suspect. There haven't been any court cases, there have been no criminal charges in those cases. That doesn't mean to say we can do. But really, I think sometimes it is overstated this issue about whether householders protecting their property is somehow going to be at risk of court Each case will be looked at, on its merits. But as I say, the law is critical. That said, I don't think it would be a good idea to give people this free rein to do what they want. It might be your child, for instance, who goes into somebody's garden to get better football. You wouldn't want to be greatly attacked because somebody's a revert. It's got to be reasonable. So, as I say, the law says you can use reasonable force to defend your property. For instance, you can't chase somebody down the road and then beat them up for the sake of it. It's got to be proportionate in circumstances.
Thank you very much. Another question from Twitter about dogs. It's an anonymous question, but they're asking, are you planning to increase the gym in dog section?
No, we unfortunately, because of our budget situation, we are not planning to increase the dog section. As I say, they do a good job for us, but we both need to understand this is a very difficult situation. We are having to review every aspect of what the force does. I hope we don't have to reduce the dog section, but as I say, we have to look at every pound that the force spends and actually say, let's get the public getting good use out of this. And it's difficult, because you look at what police dog does and the utility and the number of arrests that a dog handler and a dog make. But you then also look at things like technology, which often again in the modern world can produce a lot of results. The investment we put into, for instance, the number plate have been incredibly successful. So these are difficult decisions that clearly we work with the Crime Commissioner on. But I wouldn't want any of the public to think that this is easy. And although the economy is growing, it's supposed to be getting better, we are still in recession and policing for the next 2 or 3 years at least.
Just a reminder, keep the questions coming in. Like I said, we have had lots of questions this evening, but we are still looking for questions. You can submit them using the hashtag #GMP on Twitter and GMP. Okay. We have another question here, and this is from Yvonne, and she's asking, what did you think of the recent Channel 4 documentary? Do you think it is damaging for the reputation of PCC across the country?
Well, I'm sure because police and crime commissioners are still a relatively new breed. Every time one does something that I don't deserve to approve of, I'm sure all police and crime commissioners get blamed for those things. But it's worth pointing out really that one documentary about an individual police and crime commissioner was about that individual police and crime commissioner. She's stood for election in Kent. I've actually, to confess, I've not seen the program. I will see it, I've not seen it again. That individual has to account for people who elect him in Kent. I'm responsible to speak in Manchester and hope that they'll judge me on what I do here. And my responsibility is to try to account to people here.
Moving on to a question from Nikki Nuttall Richardson. She's asking about drug testing kits, and she's asking, are they available over the counter? If not, when will they be? Because it seems to me that more and more teenagers are going off the rails due to drug use, and parents need help.
I'm not even aware really what a drug testing kit is. I think the important first thing to say is actually all the figures show the level of private legal drug use is going down, particularly amongst young people. So I think that's a positive story. Actually, our young people are drinking less and taking less illegal drugs. But on the other hand, clearly it is an issue, and it's still a concern to parents. Clearly, we're particularly concerned about people who go to parties and nightclubs and take ecstasy or take other supposed illegal drugs or legal highs, which often can be very damaging, particularly mixed with alcohol. So there is a serious issue here. I've got to be honest, I don't know whether there are testing kits available. On the other hand, there's lots of advice on various websites which you can get, which will give you an indication about whether somebody is possibly involved in drugs or not. Without having to test it really. I know this is a difficult issue with teenagers in terms of the relationship with honesty and the rest of it. But I think the key thing is, I know schools do a lot of stuff around drug use and things like that. And it's trying to make information available to young people so they understand the dangers. And obviously as well, the parents can be both sides at the same time.
I must say, as I understand it, whilst you can test for certain types of drugs, we do this in our prisons, we do it, perhaps a lot of the breathalyzer is a kind of testing kit, but the idea of these young people across all the range of substances that now are there for use and abuse is what we honestly fancy for. In the end, I think we do have to take the concept of education a lot more seriously than we've ever done. It really is about trying to say to people that this is about choice of lifestyle, and trying to get across some of the really important message. Not that in that highly moralistic term that it doesn't work, it's in a very practical way. But Chief Crosby is absolutely right. Actually, the young people now come under enormous temptation in many ways. But they are using less drugs, they're using less alcohol. All the indications there, and that's got to be confused. Heroin, so not many years ago was seen as being the threatening menace, is a drug that not only much now used by older people, it's not used by young people. There's some successes out there, and we should try and build on those successes. We've got to get across to us, we've got to get across to young people to say that their choices and we can do better than that. So actually, I do think that it's doing you help. So I'm not sure that Justin is going to be season.
Moving on to a question from Lisa. They're saying if the police raided a place and they don't leave a recovery note, how can we contact the police about that?
We can say ring the police on 101 about any matter. In normal practice, we have been to premises, particularly search premises, the requirement of the Police and Criminal Act for us to leave documentation there. I think obviously in most cases we want to do that. So again, I don't know about the circumstances of that case, but again, if you're worried about any incident or question, any incident involving police, then just please ring 101.
This is, I suppose, more of a comment from Bill Johnson from the question. It says, Dear Sir Peter, please can more neighbourhood police officers patrol on foot? We never see them anymore, just the PCSOs, but they are very limited. And when dealing with criminals, they can't arrest. It's very difficult to communicate with officers that drive past you in a car with 2 to 3 officers in. More crimes could be deterred if officers are visible and enforced. Please look into this.
Well, I agree with that. The only thing I say is, we've said we've got 1,200 fewer police officers than we had a few years ago. We've tried to make our savings in headquarters and in back office operations to try and preserve the front line, but that has been difficult. And really, the officers that we have got are spending more time responding to incidents of the public and investigating crimes. And it's also true that their work is more targeted, so it's targeted at times when crimes are occurring, times when social behaviour is occurring. So, for instance, we have over 50 officers, many of them from Manchester City Centre weekend during the night. Only certain types of people are out there using nightclubs will see them. It's also true that we probably, in terms of feeling colours, we have a greater understanding that it is a small group of persistent offenders who commit much crime, often within hours of being released from prison. And so a lot of our officers' efforts are targeted towards those individuals. So, I do agree that the control of the community is important, but I think we do try to preserve that, and it is really trying to use the best tactics for the public, getting our officers in the area where there's most chance of catching criminals and responding to the concerns of the public. Feel most strongly about.
I'd also like to make the point that PCSOs actually do a good job. I was in Piccadilly Gardens the other day. Actually, I'm trying not to Gardens, but we saw a young PCSO who was working with men who were a bit exuberant, and she was calming them down wonderfully just by talking to them, by engaging them within our local communities. PCSOs are often the first link between the Manchester police. They're the ones who do pick up the intelligence. They are the ones who don't pick up community who have things to say. So CSO is a really important part of the, not simply the Greater Manchester Police structure, but actually the structure and it's our community safer.
Moving on to our community reporter programme, which is launching for the second time now, second round of community reporters. Is this programme worthwhile? And how much do we as a force get out of sending civilians out?
Well, as you say, this programme is about members of the public being able to come forward and be a community reporter and go out with some of our officers on patrol. And the key thing, I think, is about, number one, helping the public to understand a little bit better about the reality of what we deal with day in, day out, but also to show our transparency, to show that we are quite happy to have members of the public to come along and see what we do, because we feel we have nothing to hide. And the Home Secretary, in fact, has recently mentioned this as an issue around Scotland Search. But, we were already introduced this. So it's only one part, really, of transparency and openness. I mean, this webcast is another aspect. But I do think we need to work even harder, helping the public to understand what we do and more transparent and open about how we do policing, some of our tactics, some of the challenges we face, and the difficult decisions we face. And clearly, as I say, having ordinary members of the public coming out on patrol with us, seeing the reality of this life, all helps in terms of that greater public understanding.
Okay. What was the feedback from people at the conference last year?
Well, it was very positive in terms of the professionalism, the commitment, the dedication and compassion we saw of our officers. I think for many people who see policing in that way, they are surprised really at the amount of, should we say, social work we do. That much of policing is about very vulnerable people and is about helping people in great distress. I think quite a number of community reports were quite surprised at the number of mental health issues that we deal with. So, I think that was the general feedback, which again, as I say, all helps people public better understand the reality of what we do.
Another question from Twitter now, it comes from Ms. Peg, and she's asking, I'm working in the very east area, and she wants to get to know the PCSO who covers that area. How can she get to know?
Hopefully, not look the site, but hopefully, seriously, if she goes on the GMP website, see her postcode or address, it will identify the very east team and will have pictures on there. So, seriously, that will give the contact numbers, it will give the email address of the very east team so she can identify her PCSO.
Thank you very much. Another question from Twitter here, it's anonymous, but I'll ask, how many chief officers do we have in the force? More or fewer than 4?
It's a bit difficult issue because the number of chief officers varies over time, really, and there are some personal circumstances involved in that. For instance, at the moment we've got an additional assistant chief constable who was seconded to the local authorities in Greater Manchester because they wanted essentially to use her and to put in a lot of the multi-agency working that we're doing at the moment. So that is clearly an increase in what we had before. I'm very conscious, obviously, of the importance of sending a clear message overall. We want to reduce the number of senior officers in the force, but to say sometimes there are particular operational needs for us and personal circumstances. As I say, sometimes other agencies give us funding for certain posts, and therefore that needs to increases.
Question here from Jack. He's looking for some advice. By the looks of it, he said, Dear Chief Constable, unknown motorists keep blocking my private driveway and prevents me from getting my car off and onto my drive. What can I do about this? I don't know who the motorists are. Is this a police matter?
But we do deal with obstruction, so next time it happens, if you take the numbers of the cars involved and contact us, we'll see what we can do. It might help. This is a constant problem. I'm thinking possibly a sign on the wall of the gate, whatever it is involved. But yes, if people try to make their best efforts to try and get the car moved by talking to someone, and that hasn't worked, then obviously yes, we do deal with those sorts of incidents.
Thank you for that. Moving onto a question from Liam Fielding. This is an interesting one. Would you arrest a member of the royal family in Mississippi, for example?
Well, Queen, under our legislation, she has crown immunity, which means that she cannot commit a crime and cannot be arrested. It's one of the things as a young officer you learn in the training school. But obviously that doesn't cover other members of the royal family, and they are absolutely liable to be arrested or prosecuted if they commit offence.
Thank you very much. Anonymous question here, moving on. Where would I be able to get a vape?
Well, we do have them. I think quite a number of our police stations, and I'm sure they're available just on the internet. There are a number of great charities as well. So again, if you contact your station,
or possibly some of the women's organisations actually have them. So it depends where the question that's particularly on the website and look for the Zane or organisations like that.
Thank you. Moving on to a question from Caroline Clark, and she's asking, who is actually responsible for the DBS checks in this locality? What this check takes? How can you justify the time it takes? So far it's taken over 40 days, and when it impacts financially on the applicant. This impacts financially on the applicant when they have absolutely no criminal record. How many staff members work in this department?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously about some of the work we do under now the world of vetting in terms of requests that we get. Much of that is actually funded by the Home Office. There are targets we try and keep to, and sometimes there will be increases in demand, and we try and cater that. Sometimes we are dependent on getting information from other places. Again, I think this particular person who's got a concern about that, do let us know. As I say, I can understand it does cause concern, but really we try and keep the level of staffing in line with funding. So, again, it's hard to justify when we're under such pressure, really more people. We try and make sure the process operates as efficiently as possible. We see checking the various databases.
Right.
When the record check.
Right. Question here about this is the first person is saying that your office is doing prosecute them for dangerous driving and certain exemptions when responding to emergency calls. Can they not just be dealt with internally and say what the trial commission if you want to?
Well, I suppose, I hope that police officers aren't being prosecuted for going about their lawful business. It's the only time that police officers should be prosecuted is when they're driving in a way that's reckless or dangerous, and that is like anything else. Police officer, non-police officer, that shouldn't be allowed. In the end, of course, there is a reality that a blue light service at times when there's blue lights flashing, we expect the police to use proportionate use of increased speed, but again, weapons of that. So it's helped us with that, just as we look at ground witnesses and service.
I mean, any decisions about prosecutions are taken by the Crown Prosecution Service, and so in the more serious cases will either be investigated by the Complaints Commission or the investigation department. With the ultimate decision about whether an officer is prosecuted in a case like this will be down to the Crown Prosecution Service.
A question here from Jason Redding, and he's asking, Mr. Lloyd, there's far too much money being spent on criminals in prison, on average £40,000 a year for each prisoner. Why is it, for example, that the Yorkshire Vicar is allowed to decide what he wants for Christmas dinner, and providing citizens need to use food banks in particular. Could you please speak to the whole concept?
Well, I think I've got a lot of sympathy. We do spend too much money in our society on prisons because actually we've got too many people in prison who are not helped by being there, and where society needs help, that's not being soft on criminal behaviour. Even earlier on, the question was asked about keeping young people. It's advised across the board that custody should be last resort. So what we want to do is break the cycle of them. Some people, their crimes are sufficiently serious that we're going to need to send them to prison. Sometimes sending people away for a very long time. There's somebody based in Manchester Police successfully arrested, brought before the courts last week, where this is somebody whose crimes against young people, to young people's prostitution, and so forth. As I think society has got to look at how we deal with somebody like that who's a repeat offender at a serious level, and where proper prison sentence is right for society. But I want to see some people sentenced for things like bizarrely not paying television prices, not putting on. I don't think any reason that society's interests are served with better ways of dealing with them, better ways of
Moving on to a question from Sharif. He says, Peter Tony, is it possible to prevent juveniles from committing crime by giving young students presentations in schools and colleges about how to avoid legal access?
Well, I mean it is, and we've had particular programs with the schools here at Greater Manchester, particularly around issues like gang involvement and knife crime, particularly when that was probably a bigger issue. Thankfully, it's at the moment in Greater Manchester. So there is, a lot of good school programs. We still have a number of schools-based officers. So absolutely, that program is really, really important. In certain places, people actually be in prison for often can be very powerful advocates as to why. To young people, they should not go down that route. So I think the point is very well made. Young people that really understands it, but are actually more law-abiding. We were, where our generation was when we were young. So, we need to keep working at it to reduce the level of juvenile crime. We also, I think, need to recognise, as I say, that young people today seem to be a lot more law-abiding, to be civilised than some of the generations before.
Well, let me pick up the same thing, because in actual fact, a young person is more likely to be a victim of crime, to be a perpetrator. We need to say that because we can't trash the new generation. Well, the question is right, is that there's not lots of things that I want to see us do more from the budgets that both the Chief Constable and I have between us, working with schools, with colleges, will be important part of that. Things like asking people not to become victims of crimes like domestic violence, young people getting into problematic relationships is a reality. Actually saying to young women, and sometimes young men as well, that there are things they can do about it. But these are really serious issues, and certain schools have it really popular. I've seen some great work in our schools where replacement police officers who are working in assessment not that long ago. One of the really good, very limited police officers outside of them. And that's something I could talk to young people about. They wouldn't think was credible. And that work with our school hopefully, less likely, yes, to be offended, less likely to be victim.
I think Tony makes a really good point that things like knife crime, mental drugs, and things like that are very important. But sadly, people are often the most risk vulnerable people in the and absolutely recognising the dangers within abusive relationships. And particularly, I think getting girls to understand that, to try and strengthen their self-awareness, their self-esteem, is really, really important. You know, the level of violence in Manchester is pretty on average 170 incidents every single day. So I think, you know, sometimes, yes, we need to look at things like knife crime, but it is that sad reality that certainly with most at risk of somebody that often have a relationship with, or just finished a relationship with, and it's really important to get that message across to people.
I mean, you mentioned violence and domestic violence.
No, it is abuse. It is about controlling behaviour. You know, it can be other forms of abuse other than violence. But it's about an abusive relationship where it ends up being controlled. And, you know, it's very important, I think, to educate young people as to what can be the signs of that and to make it absolutely unacceptable. To try and make sure that young people, particularly young girls, are in a position to resist that and to escape from that, to get into a controlling abusive relationship.
And they should.
Absolutely. And a little problem at the moment, rather sadly, we've got when it is possible domestic abuse is bound to increase during the World Cup. Actually, the messages to would-be victims and don't talk, because pretty much as a police investigator, as are lots of other agencies. Message to offenders, you know, go out to enjoy yourself, by all means, have a drink, which I was drunk alcohol before, don't go home and take life's frustrations, whether it's England's not one, what's happening in general, out on those things you cherish, and so let's make the World Cup time a happy party, and it's
Very much. Another question here, it's an anonymous question, but this person's asking, I read about London police getting water cannons. Is this something that GMP?
It's not something we're considering. I mean, the Home Secretary's got to make a decision on whether she's going to allow the use of water cannon. As I understand it, the water cannon which will be purchased by the Metropolitan Police will be available to the whole country. I think it's been made clear that it's only in certain circumstances where water cannon are actually of any great use, particularly because of the nature of our cities. So clearly is something which we keep under review, but you know, we've not really seen the sort of violence, the sort of protests which would, you know, water cannon would be helpful. Clearly we had very serious disturbances a few years ago, but really that was often about people running to breaking into shops, you know, running away from the police, and really water cannon would have helped in that situation. So, you know, overall, we are very, very keen to hold on to the style of policing, which is about supports. It is about trying to deal with protests and disturbances proportionately. You know, so you know, this is a sensitive issue. Clearly, if it becomes an issue, we'll discuss that with the Police and Crime Commissioner and the wider public.
You know, that's the really important point. What the region said, those things are very, very important. It's a very different style of policing once you start using indiscriminate response, like a water cannon. It takes away the individual and also puts people in there. So it's a much more difficult position, and sometimes potentially even a dangerous position. It's not British policing. I would never say to the Chief Constable, never come along and make a case of water. I think before we do that, we ought to debate about the circumstances, and we want to see it on the streets and the circumstances when it would be sensible to see the view. The idea that water can unsafe for the things we've seen in Greater Manchester, which is a long way from being very responsibility. So it relates to community as community, and one that is rather bad, like some foreign police force and one like an army.
I've got a question here from Facebook, it's coming by the GMP Facebook site. It's from Robbo, who is a Manchester City fan. Just inquired a question. He said, how can you justify closing down the majority of Manchester City centres to allow a bunch of overpaid ones to have a parade? It took me hours to get home. Was this a police or council move?
Well, I mean, it is a council decision to close the roads, but obviously we do that very much in cooperation with them. I think clearly there's, on the whole, there is a very strong feeling that we want to celebrate when one of the Manchester teams wins the cup or wins the Premiership. I think there is clearly a serious issue that there are lots of different events in the city centre, not just the football parades, but sometimes protests, sometimes different processions, and it is a balance for us in trying to allow that to continue. But absolutely, there are people wanting to move about, shops want to continue trading, so it is always a difficult balance really, where again we try and work with them. And I think on the whole, to be fair, Manchester City Council pretty good to arranging these events. I mean, we do have to close the road, getting it open as quickly as possible to try and get information out there. But I do think on the whole, a number of different events. We've got Manchester Day coming up, we have Gay Pride in August, and we've obviously just had the Manchester 10K and events like that, which do involve closing roads. But I think on the whole, I think the majority of people would say that the city does benefit from a lot of big community events.
Do you know all over the world, Manchester is known for its football. It's great that Greater Manchester has not just two, but a significant number of international games football teams. I'm very proud of it. I'm a Manchester United supporter, but I was pleased with the City won the Premiership because the name of Manchester is up there in lights. But this is a city which is used by people for different purposes. As Peter says, different festivals, different activities. I didn't, in fact, hear any of the city supporters complaining that the commuters were stopping them getting to their celebration that day. So there's got to be a give and take. The city don't really the Premiership that often, so as a unity supporter. So I think we must reconcile that to is what makes this work.
I think it's worth mentioning, we've just launched the GP traffic physically, which people can check for road closures, etc.
Yeah. But not when they're driving.
And moving on to a question from John. He says, I was recently evicted at night crime and was extremely impressed with how GMP officers and other police staff dealt with this. So much so that he's interested in joining GMP as an officer. Would it be possible to tell me how to go ahead applying, as recent recruitment has been all internal? Would it be better to volunteer with special and gain experience and then apply? Because it's keep up the work, and thanks to GMP for inspiring me to want to join the force and give something back to my home.
Well, it was a really good story, and I'm pleased that victim in obviously what was a very nasty crime, but they got a good service, and got to say that about 85% of our victims are satisfied, very satisfied with the service that they get. I know there's been a number of questions submitted to the webcast about recruitment, and some of them are quite technical, and I think we'll probably reply to them by putting some more information on the website. But clearly the level of recruitment is going to be very low for companies. We do encourage people to be special constables. We are swearing in another bunch of special constables tomorrow night, but I can't say anything else then. It's very difficult. It is very competitive. And for instance, we've got 800 specials and about 800 PCSOs, and recruit about 50 police officers a year. So, I would encourage anybody, thinking of joining the police, yes, think about being special, but I'd have to say be realistic. Also look at things like being a PCSO. It's a great way of starting in policing, getting out there in the community, talking, being part of the policing team. But as I said, I can't sadly say anything that it's very competitive and very frustrating for me that there are lots of good people out there that want to join the force, want to be police officers, but clearly we've got to live in the real financial world.
Very much. And just left of the webcast, you can submit your questions by using the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag AskGMP, and you can also submit questions via the GMP site. So keep them coming. We've had some brilliant questions so far this evening. Just moving on to another question from Twitter. This question is anonymous. But this person's asking, what can be done about illegal parking? Why don't the police take it seriously? Shouldn't fixed penalty notices be issued?
That was some time ago. The responsibility for enforcing parking was handed over to the local authorities. And I know certainly some places people think the local authorities are too robust in enforcing parking. And if a vehicle is causing an obstruction, we can take action and we can issue fixed penalty notices. And clearly, obviously, if it becomes causing an obstruction, we can tell them to move on. I think clearly it is a frustration in certain communities. We live in a quite congested area, so it is about trying to work with local authorities. Sometimes enforcement is an answer. Sometimes clearly it's about trying to sort out the number of vehicles and trying to find other ways of dealing with that. But as I say, the bottom line really is the local authorities are responsible for parking.
It's probably worth actually the question of getting in touch with the council if there is a persistent problem in their own area. And there are different things that have been tried in different parts of the Greater Manchester. Sometimes residents only parking schemes, for example, which does require enforcement of it. Sometimes actually the design of the highway system to allow for parking and to well travel down streets, etc. It's just worth talking to the local so if there's a particular problem in the area.
Moving on, a question from AW. They asked about Piccadilly Gardens. Should be raised early, but Piccadilly Gardens can be a nasty place to go even during the day. Can you please increase the police presence there and tell people to pay attention? The other day I was sitting there and next to me were a few kids, about 16 years old, and they were drinking alcohol. 2 PCSOs walked past and they were shouting to each other, totally oblivious to the activity going on around them.
Sorry about that experience. But on the other hand, I do actually regularly patrol the city centre myself. I know the officers and PCSOs do take a lot of action in terms of seizing alcohol. The city centre is a no drinking zone. Piccadilly Gardens has been a constant challenge for us. We regularly do operations to try and get people out of it. There's a local front view which is unacceptable. There are a lot of people sadly that hang around. I think the local authority has made some changes with the markets around there and the new stores which have opened and now they're determined how they can improve it. I mean, the difficulty is it is a bit of a mecca. It is a transport interchange with trams and buses, and therefore that can attract people who looking for criminal opportunities or just hanging around. It is very difficult for us to have a constant 24-hour presence. We do use CCTV. We do particular operations. I know the officers and PCSOs in the city centre pay constant attention to the developments. But really, long term, we've got to find a solution to that area. We have other parts of the city which don't suffer this constant problem, and really through a mixture of enforcement and probably redesign of the area, we need to find a long-term solution.
And just on that, we've got the summer holidays coming up. This kind of issue might be replicated across the falls and in certain areas. But what plans have we got for the summer holidays?
Well, I think we know very well that as the temperature increases, often antisocial behaviour increases. Spiked last summer because of the temperature. Tony's already mentioned the World Cup and drinking and things like that. No, we are aware of that. We do again support and take part in a number of safe summer schemes, base schemes, support various charities and various community initiatives, and the schools do quite a lot. So we are aware of that, but it's also a challenge for us because our own staff want to take holidays as well. But as I said, we are conscious of that. For instance, we have plans together in terms of the forthcoming World Cup and continue that through the summer.
Great. Thank you very much. And next question: do you agree that there should be higher fines for trying to show people who just wrong?
I think that in the end, enforcement of any sanction is important. The unpaid fines, etc., do matter, not necessarily because of the revenue, because there's no point in the courts handing down those as if they don't mean anything. Actually, people don't believe it doesn't matter. It does matter because it changes the society. But I think actually what I would say is this, really, with motion offences, one of the things that sort of speaking my keen to see is that where there is not just police involved, it's about trying to make the maximum impact on things that can risk. It's not just about ticking a box and saying we've collected X number of pounds this week, or certainly no trace. It really is trying to say, let's look at where we talked before about cyclists, we talked before about pedestrians. Let's see where people are. So let's try and use policing not as a final generation scheme, so making those and safe places for people to.
Yeah, most of the people now who commit speeding offences or signal offences or mobile phone offences, they are offered the opportunity to go and drive an improvement scheme as an alternative to a fine. But on the other hand, I think there are certain motorists in certain instances that, particularly people speeding at a high level on the motorway, putting other people in danger, and they are a person who's got quite a lot of income. It does seem to me that to be proportionate against other people, they should suffer quite high fine.
Perhaps make it a little bit actually, just to say this, and for many, many years I've never understood society why somebody with records in the motor car is treated as being less criminal than somebody who puts life in danger. And I don't fancy our fines. I think sometimes people use a motor vehicle in a way that's endages road users. So we have to look at what that means in terms of the total criminal sanction and what people look for manslaughter in different circumstances, and trying to actually treat it as a very, very serious.
Thank you very much. Another driving related question here, and this person's saying, I saw the car outside Manchester Town Hall the other week through Drive campaign. Do you ever think people will stop drinking and driving? Some of them, basically, do you ever think people will stop drinking and driving so more people like me don't lose a member?
Well, that comes on very well from the last question. I've met people whose lives have been shattered because they've lost a loved one because of drink driving. How do you get over that? How do you explain? How would I explain if I were to drink and drive? That trash somebody else's life, that trash the lives of all their families. Human is real. Yes, quite rightly, Grace Manchester Police showed a very badly wrecked car, but the best testimony there from them was the one who reminded them that was her life. It was her son who drank too much. She knows what the cost of her and what's the cost of her forever, and that's why she was so keen to take part in the same as drive. It's not just to slow people, it's about destroying the family, it's not destroying people.
You mentioned our campaign around domestic abuse, and we will also
yeah, we've got the summer drink drive campaign, but on the other hand, we have a campaign all year round, and sadly, as the person sending the message indicates, it's a constant problem. It hasn't gone away, and we do target it all the time. Times around Christmas and summer, we try and gain greater publicity. It is still a continuing problem. I think there's often not enough recognition that people involved in the crime have a very serious alcohol problem. We need to make sure that's dealt with before we're allowed to crime license again.
Moving on to another question from Twitter from the Biting Duck. Can you foresee the police service ever becoming privatised, and are the cuts effective?
I would oppose the privatisation of our police service in every way. It would change the nature. It seems all about one of the fundamentals of our police force is that it is embedded in our communities, so neighbourhood policing. It is about the is being from the community it serves. Once you put this onto the basis of something like profit, profit is not stable, right? It's better than that. So in terms of what is essentially a public service, it can't be in that way that St Peter's has to make decisions, not in terms of the public good, in terms of public protection, but in terms of what makes the best return on the shareholders and best never which is
well, obviously, the cuts have been a huge challenge for us. They've been very painful decisions. We've had to be open about whether the private sector could undertake certain activities which are not core to policing. But on the whole, we've kept most things in-house because we think that's the best thing to do. And I think the important thing is, we can't just use privatisation as sort of an answer to this. There are some really complex issues about how the public service needs to operate in a very different way. We need to make better use of technology and information. We need to find ways of getting the public involved in policing, so they take more responsibility for their actions. There are some really different issues about how we use information about the public, which will allow us to be more effective. There are security concerns. We need to try and find a way through that. So, there are often meatier issues. People look at things like privatisation, but actually it doesn't solve a lot of things. There are some really big policy issues that we need to address over the coming years. They will continue to provide effective policing and at the same time cope with financial reality.
Moving on to a similar style question from Mr. Arnold, who's asking, do you believe this government supports?
I think that's fair to Peter's political neutrality. Look, we've seen some serious cutbacks in the volumes of money for athletes over recent years, and I think we do have to recognise that that's making some very, very difficult decisions in policing. I'm not neutral in all this, but let me say in a much more neutral fashion. Our society's got to have a proper debate about how we fund policing service as we move forward, because we can't afford to put in jeopardy both the cultural traditions and the capacity to improve what policing is all about in the future. We can't do that. That comes constant cuts and we just have to listen to that. But just reflects also on some of the things that Peter's been saying. Modern policing isn't simply about people doing what the government sees as the traditional policing role. When the police have to work with somebody with serious mental health issues at 1 o'clock in the morning, in the end, those Manchester police have got to work with services and other agencies to make sure that that individual and generally safe. Now, within that, there has to be a conversation about how does policing affect in the modern world, a very complicated modern world, with the massive impact of those agencies. If we increase the management of the service, we can't do that at the same time as cutting back the resources going in.
I don't get involved in party politics. I would need to say that both the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary were very supportive. Sadly, our two officers were murdered. I've also been clear that some people might argue about the tone of the Home Secretary's speech to the Police Federation, but a lot of it, what was said, needed to be said, and we need to move forward from that. It is a difficult time, but I'd also say actually, we feel that some of the reforms have not been enough in terms of how policing needs to continue to change. So I think we need to avoid fights, and exactly as Tony said, there are some really complex issues in policing, which I'm not sure are party political issues, but will need to be addressed by any government in terms of how we move forward and continue to have the best service for the public and so deal with some quite difficult policy issues.
Another question that's come in from Twitter is from Paul Jeffries. And Paul asks, what can you do about litter and graffiti, lower level crime? It's all correlated together, areas get neglected.
Yes, this is serious. If some people sort of have an idea that people are not bothered about things like this, but we know enough that if an area is neglected, If there is litter, if there is graffiti, then that actually encourages crime. It encourages a community where nobody cares. So we do try and work with local authorities. Again, it's difficult when that comes to their smoking. But often, again, sometimes our PCSOs are involved in encouraging litter picks. In working with schools, sometimes to discourage kids from dropping litter. That's what the problem is, of trying to get graffiti cleaned up. But again, often, if you've got good active communities that are looking out for this sort of thing, that helps to discourage things. So, litter and graffiti is important. But often, as I say, we work with local authorities, but often it's local communities working together that can help to address this.
So Peter and I were at a meeting yesterday with the town councils, and one of the conversations came up about exactly how pretty much this community use its police officers and its other staff to work with the local authorities staff and whereby intelligent use of the powers that each different public service has got, we can bring greater impact. But some of that is in the end working with local communities, because in the end, the people have the strongest sense of ownership of the immediacy of their own area. And that's why actually, there's back to much earlier question, the link between PCSOs is that around the area who do see the rock spots, do see the graffiti, giving parts of that picture.
A question here from Mr. Mann. He's asking, how is morale amongst
We carry out a fairly regular staff survey, and in some ways the results of that are not great. People are concerned about the level of uncertainty. They're clearly concerned about us. They are often concerned about the public debate about policing, where a lot of police officers feel undervalued, feel that a lot of the press coverage is unnecessarily negative. We've got a Constable reminder that there actually is a huge level of public support out there for policing. So I think, when you get a group of officers together about it, they can feel fairly depressed. When you actually talk to them individually, they're very passionate about policing and they love their job. They want to try and do the best for the public. And it's trying to help our staff through that. We need to be criticised, we deserve to be criticised, we need to be held to account. But I think there does need to be recognition. Vast majority of officers and staff do an outstanding job in a very challenging circumstances, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, often dealing with issues that often society like to turn a blind eye to. That's not the front. We don't get the option. We are the agency of last resort, and the public so we're trying to help them. And so, I'm not saying that morale is wonderful, but there is also something about the police culture that, because of the challenges we often face individually in incidents, we can the way of getting through that. So we've got to be realistic, but my big concern at the moment is the lack of promotion opportunities. I think that is damaging the balance. It is one of the consequences of the squeeze on budgets. There are a lot fewer promotion opportunities. We've got lots of great staff who want to do more things, want to develop, want to take on more responsibility, and perhaps we've got to find a way through that.
I'll just illustrate what Victor just said as Chief Constable. I come here, I don't come from a police background. Obviously had involvement in things that my so look, I've seen a difference picture since I became something role we've got now. Peter was absolutely right that one of the things that is true is that gets a group of police officers together and they have sometimes legitimate, sometimes less legitimate, and sometimes things go wrong because that has to be there, etc. But what I really have been admiring is the number of people who come to work every day within GMP, police officers, PCSOs, police support staff, who simply want to get out there and make the community a better place to live. So great. We should be going.
Right. And that leads into the next question, actually, it's from Bobby on Twitter. He's asking, what's the reason that you want to
Because Great Manchester, I mean, it's just an amazing place. It never stops. I tried twice to be Chief Constable. I failed the first time, succeeded the second time. But was always just sort of thrilled by the place and the amount of activity here. So I'm very proud and privileged to be the Chief Constable. I think it's the best job in policing. It has its challenges. We have our bad days, but it's an enormous privilege to serve with Great Manchester.
And for me, I grew up around here. I can't think of anything more important than making this community the place they want to live, work, raise their families in. Feeling that this is a good safe community is very, very central to that. And obviously, policing, not just what the police service itself does, but what policing is part of making this a great community. It's absolutely fun. So it's a privilege to look at. I think it's a privilege to be a non-human in, not say simply be born here. Manchester adopts people who don't be a non-human. We should say, but absolutely, this is a great place and it's one that's improved.
Just a reminder then that we've only got 10 minutes left of this webcast this evening, so if you do have any questions, please do send them in using the hashtag AskGMP or via GMP. We'll just move into a couple of our final questions then. And this again is from Twitter. This is, if my boss persists in singing at work, can I or my colleague make a citizen's arrest?
I suppose it possibly depends on how offensive they are being and how bad singing is, really. So I myself think I'm a great singer, and absolutely, so visually Chief Constable, I should get them to expect my own talents are recognised.
But then we get complaints from the question about Peter singing.
Well,
we may have to reconsider this.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. And another question, this is anonymous actually, I don't have the name of this person, but they ask, why do we see most police officers out on the beat and most real police officers in county house? Surely people would think twice about crime if they saw a real officer on the street.
Well, I sort of answered that a little bit earlier, really. As I say, I think the way policing is developed, we are a lot more targeted. Officers do absolutely go out for patrol, but particularly in city centres at night and occasions like that. Because we've got fewer officers there, spending more time actually responding to calls and investigating crimes. And it's very, very deliberate. CSOs are out there actually on the street talking to the public, and that then feeds into the work that police officers do. It is trying to get across to the public as well this reality of policing, that the vast majority of crime is committed by the same group of people. It's almost impressive that we get a series of offences and somebody is arrested and they've just come out of prison. And what that means is that a lot of work of police officers is targeted against that group. It's not sort of random policing. It's not sort of policing about I might just fall over a criminal. It is actually, we know who these people are. And it's about trying to target some of these people who visit 2 or twice or 3 times a day. Keep a close eye on them. Obviously, as well as trying to work with probation on people to try and change their behaviour. So really, as the budget's got tighter, as policing has become more complex, we've had to be more targeted. The way we use technology, the way we use intelligence and information. And we've got a much better picture of the places where crime is likely to occur and the people who are most likely to commit crime. And that's really where our officers' efforts are targeted.
Very much. Moving on to a question here about our horses. Why don't officers or staff clear up the horse
I mean, it's just been a thing, I suppose, that it's in the street. I suppose it's kind of the downside. It's great to see the police horses, but the downside is obviously, yes. I mean, obviously in the old days, people used to rush behind the horse and pick up the droppings to put them on their rose beds, as I understand it. So I don't know, but
I can assure you they did, because when I was a kid, my father would hand us a shovel and say, go out there and pick up the horse and the droppings, because there was a lot more horses in those days. But I do think being realistic about this, that if we want it's being engaged in the targeted activities and making it the idea. So those PCs on horseback in Depop and with roadshow, so it's not the best use of this time.
Amazing section.
Yeah.
Horizon.
Okay.
Operations.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bobby on Twitter is asking, what is the one thing you would tell a new officer, and what was the best advice that you?
As it happens, last Friday I was talking to a group of our new recruits, and I think I was actually asked this question, and I said the best advice is talk. That is the absolute foundation of policing. Any police officer, yes, you've got to have your knowledge, you're a member of the law, you've got to know technology, all sorts of complex things, but the number one core skill is your ability to talk to people, and your best weapon is your mouth.
The best advice you got.
It's probably too impolite to repeat out loud. But I think I know that the future has just said that that's what's writing all the rules of life, communicating with each other, and treating each other as sensible and human nature is an awful long way. And that, to be honest, it lies whether we lose Marks and Spencer's and shop on so or whether it's West Manchester Police in actually that kind of mutual respect as part of not making the world a better place, it's making the world a place where we can work together to a common end. So I think that's I think something someone said to me that police officer's best weapon is his or her tongue. I'm sure that's absolutely.
Yeah, it's that ability to reason, calm down situations, get information.
Right, the final question of tonight, that's the World Cup thing actually. What impact will the World Cup have on policing in Greater Manchester? I saw the concerns about domestic violence in the day, but what are the other problems that this tournament will bring? And also, will you watch the World Cup? And how far do you think England will go?
The serious point is clearly the domestic violence issue is seriously worrying us because we know for the biggest tournaments the level of domestic violence goes up into a really serious issue. This is about people living in misery and sadly, an average of around 77 million in this country being killed with domestic violence. So that's a serious worry. Clearly there is an extension to the pubs as I understand it. So people drinking more, we hope they'll drink sensibly. We know if people are at home though drinking a lot, some people tend to have arguments and fall out, so we're expecting some of that as well. But again, I think as Tony said earlier, we hope the vast majority of people have a great time. I've got no idea about how well England will be. I think it's good that we've got a young team. I will do my best to at least watch some of the games, although I know some of them are quite late at night. So one of the things isn't about Greater Manchester is we are a great footballing place. We are the world capital of football, we would like to think. So I'm sure everybody will be taking interest in it.
And obviously the downsides of pieces that we talked about, they are serious. So there is a strong message, yes, let's enjoy the World Cup, let's enjoy it with each other and not against each other. Whether it's violence on our streets or whether it's violence in the home, there can't be a tolerance for that, and there won't be. Manchester. But one of the best signs, I think, some nice weather, to see police officers mingling with people around about this accommodation, because that's always a kind of healthy sign when people see that the police and the enjoying each other's company. As to how far England can go, well, I think you can get pretty good odds on England winning the World Cup, but I wouldn't be betting stage. I'd like to think
well, I've got England in the opposite state, so I know.
Well, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the webcast. So, thank you for joining. Thank you very much for your time. Please do keep your eyes open for future webcasts on the GMP website. Thank you very much for everybody who's